Have you ever wondered how plants make new plants? It's a fascinating process called reproduction. Imagine a world without beautiful flowers, tasty fruits, or towering trees. That's what it would be like if plants didn't reproduce. Some plants reproduce using only themselves, while others need a partner. Let's explore the amazing world of plant reproduction. Plants have two main ways of reproducing: asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction is like making a copy of yourself, while sexual reproduction involves two parents and their genetic information combining to create a unique offspring. Get ready to learn all about how plants make more plants. Asexual reproduction is a fascinating process where a plant creates a new plant all by itself. One common type of asexual reproduction is called vegetative propagation. Have you ever noticed tiny plants growing from the leaf edges of a plant or new shoots emerging from the base of a tree? That's vegetative propagation in action. Many plants we know and love, like strawberries, potatoes, and onions, reproduce this way. Some plants use other methods of asexual reproduction, like budding, fragmentation, and spore formation. Budding is when a new plant develops from an outgrowth or bud on the parent plant, like in yeast. Vegetative propagation is like a plant's superpower. It lets them create new plants from different parts of themselves, like stems, roots, and leaves. This is especially helpful for plants that might have trouble reproducing sexually. Let's look at some examples of vegetative propagation stems. Think of ginger or potatoes. The eyes on a potato are actually buds that can sprout into new plants. Similarly, a piece of ginger with a node can be planted to grow a new ginger plant. Roots? Sweet potatoes are a great example of root propagation. Leaves? Some plants, like the bryophyllum, have special buds on their leaf margins. When these buds come in contact with soil, they develop into new plantlets. We use techniques like cutting, grafting, and layering to propagate plants for agriculture and gardening. Section 4, sexual reproduction, the birds and the bees and the flowers. Now let's talk about sexual reproduction in plants. Unlike asexual reproduction, sexual reproduction involves two parents and the combination of their genetic material. The stars of the plant sexual reproduction show are the flowers. Flowers are not just pretty to look at, they are the reproductive organs of many plants. They contain special parts that produce the plant equivalents of sperm and egg, called pollen and ovules. Inside the flower, you'll find a stamen. This is the male reproductive part and consists of the anther and filament. The anther produces pollen, which carries the male genetic material. Pistil, this is the female reproductive part and consists of the stigma, style, ovary, and ovule. For sexual reproduction to happen, the pollen from the stamen needs to reach the pistil of the same type of flower or another flower of the same species. Section 5, pollination, a journey of pollen. Pollination is like a grand adventure for pollen grains. It's how the male genetic material from the anther reaches the female reproductive parts of a flower. There are two main ways pollination can happen: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination. Some plants can pollinate themselves. Cross-pollination. This is more common and happens when pollen from one plant's flower is carried to the stigma of a flower on a different plant of the same species. But how does pollen get around? Plants have some incredible helpers: wind, water, and animals. Wind. Some plants rely on the wind to carry their pollen. Water. Aquatic plants may rely on water currents to transport their pollen. Animals. Many plants rely on animals like bees, butterflies, birds, and even bats to transfer their pollen. Pollination ensures genetic diversity and the continuation of plant species. Section 6, from flower to seed, the miracle of fertilization. Once a pollen grain lands on the stigma of a compatible flower, the real magic begins. The pollen grain germinates and grows a tiny tube called a pollen tube. This tube grows down through the style all the way to the ovary, carrying the male genetic material. Inside the ovary, the pollen tube reaches an ovule. The male genetic material from the pollen then fuses with the female genetic material inside the ovule. This process is called fertilization. The fertilized ovule develops into a seed which contains a tiny plant embryo and a food supply, all packaged within a protective seed coat. Meanwhile, the ovary surrounding the ovule also undergoes a remarkable transformation. It develops into a fruit. The fruit serves as a protective structure for the developing seeds and helps with their dispersal. Section 7. Spreading life, the journey of a seed. Seeds are like tiny packages of life, ready to sprout and grow into new plants. But for this to happen, they need to be dispersed or spread away from the parent plant. Why is dispersal so important? Imagine if all the seeds from a plant fell right below it. They would have to compete with each other and the parent plant for sunlight, water and nutrients. Dispersal gives seeds a better chance of survival by reducing competition and allowing them to colonize new areas. Plants have evolved fascinating ways to disperse their seeds, often relying on wind, water, animals, or even explosive mechanisms. Wind dispersal. Seeds designed for wind dispersal are often light and have wings or parachute-like structures to help them float on the breeze. Water dispersal. Plants near water often have seeds that can float. Animal dispersal. Some seeds have hooks or barbs that attach to animal fur, while others are enclosed in tasty fruits that animals eat and then disperse in their droppings. Explosive dispersal. Some plants have pods that dry out and burst open with force, flinging the seeds away from the parent plant. Seed dispersal is a critical step in the plant life cycle, ensuring the survival and propagation of plant species.